Synnøve, absolutely a pleasure to meet you today. And you must be very excited about being in Soho.
Oh yeah, very excited. Very excited indeed.
It's a kind of time traveling horror movie, so it's not something that we see very often. Was it good for you to get into a project that was so, I suppose, so different?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the nice thing about getting an opportunity to work with someone like Edgar Wright. There's nothing that he makes, no two things that are the same. So I knew just from the get-go that it was going to be a really unique project, and yeah, it definitely proved to be that. So.
And you're playing the part of, is it Jocasta, isn't it?
Yeah,
how you
Jocasta.
pronounce it? And she's an antagonist, if I'm right. Can you tell us a little bit more about her?
Yeah, she's sort of the main antagonist at the beginning of the story when Eloise, who's played by Thomasin McKenzie, comes to London from Cornwall. And yeah, was just a really fun part for me to sort of get into. She's sort of makes Eloise's life pretty difficult. She's that classic sort of really bitchy, not very nice girl that you encounter on occasion, especially when you're at, it's lovely because she's at her most vulnerable in a sense, Eloise, when she comes to London. The first person she meets is Jocasta, who makes her life very, very miserable. Yeah.
Well, it's what's interesting is that when I had the pleasure of interviewing Richard Gere, if I can kind of pick the name up off the ground with it, but and it was for a part where he's playing an antagonist, really, and he had said to me, it's not up to the actor to make a judgment call on the personality, and is that kind of your even though she is bitchy, you kind of have to be objective about her, really.
Well, exactly. You have to try and make this person into a sort of 3D kind of thing of substance. So, it's my job to try and make her human and sort of empathetic in a sense, which is definitely what I tried to do. And I tried to sort of draw on, I don't know, people that maybe I've known or that I've encountered at points in my life that have sort of made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And yeah, I think that as he said, you can't judge them, because then they sort of become a caricature. You're just playing that meanness, and actually I need to sort of love Jocasta in order to make her believable. So it was fun. I had a lot of fun. It was really, really fun. But I was very aware that I think everyone on set was a little bit, just the crew were a bit more sort of tentative with me, and then I sort of realized, oh no, they think I'm really mean. So that was fun to try and overcompensate with being very nice.
Everybody said, oh, she's so lovely to work with.
Yeah, I know. Well,
and I imagine as well, because the great thing about being an actor is that you get to kind of inhabit all these different personalities that, on a day-to-day basis, we wouldn't normally encounter in normal life. So for you, often, they say about the bully is somebody that's often been bullied. So did you kind of go into some sort of backstory and try and give her a reason as to why she's behaving as she is, really?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting because it's so jam-packed, this film, and it's like, I've seen it once and I'm going to see it again. And I don't usually like to watch myself that much, but something like this, you want to sort of see it as many times as possible because it's so packed full of detail. And Jocasta, in her first scene, there's lots of reference. It's just so jam-packed, and she's got so many great lines. But in that, you sort of learn actually a lot about her and where she came from. So that to me was really like what I stuck to, and what I drew from was trying to, again, make her this sort of empathetic person. And she references growing up in care in Manchester and then coming down, and she sort of really elevated her accent. And I think, finding that backstory, even if it's only, you're in the film for half an hour or whatever it is, it's still, it's so important to bring that character to life in a really truthful way. And it was just a great opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. And you're playing a part that the part is in the present day, because obviously the film, for people that don't know, is kind of set between here and the 1960s.
Yeah.
And you've played period drama in the past, and when you start to think about kind of breaking down of characters and women's roles, we've evolved, or I mean, even men have evolved, women have evolved over the period of time. So do you have to kind of think differently when you're, say, playing in Medici, you're playing a kind of much more innocent role, and what a woman would be more like in that time? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that was actually really interesting, because it was, medieval Italy, and you kind of have to get into the physicality of someone who's, grown up in such a man's world, and she really is there to facilitate her, to give birth to her husband's children in a sense. And that's an interesting thing as an actor, when going back into different periods of time, even thinking about like the lack of technology in the 60s and what that would do, what that does to you, or how that influences young people and the way they encounter, the way they interact with the world, in a sense. So it's always really interesting going back and dwelling on periods of history. But again, for this, I was in modern day. But yeah, I always find that really, really fascinating. And there's a lot of physicality that you can kind of work on. I don't know. I found myself with Medici kind of really wanting to think about the way that, how a woman would like walk at that time. How does a woman walk when she's wearing like a corset, and with just with all that's going on,
And actually, it's an interesting point that you say there, because there was an interview that I did ages and ages ago about sort of Titanic, and they'd had to go back and do ADR, and James Cameron was saying, no, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like when you're on set and we were filming. And basically, it was down to the corset, and they all had to go and do ADR wearing corsets
with the exactly.
So
it does completely change so many things that you don't even realize. Even like the pitch of your voice or the quality of your voice, all of those things change.
Absolutely.
And shoes also, like with period dramas, like shoes are very important. Shoes really influence how you walk and how you like get around and how you hold yourself. So I love that side of my job, and that's why I love doing things from different time periods, and then modern day stuff, because I mean it's very easy to relate. Or maybe it's not, but it's easier in a sense to sort of fall into that, because it's closer to where you are at naturally. But
and you going back to kind of your training, really, you trained at Lambda. So how important was going and getting a training in your craft, really, to help kind of provide you with the tools to be to have a technique and to be able to adapt to different roles that you're being presented with?
I mean it was so important. I didn't complete my training, but because I got a job, but no, I think I learned the most valuable things there, really. I don't regret not leaving, because I think for me also working and gaining experience and just being on a job is so important. But definitely that it is a craft, and it is, there are so many different ways of sort of falling into a character and getting into that character. And I think I wouldn't have known how to do that without going to drama school.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've obviously worked in TV as well as working in film as well. How does that differ? Because at least with sort of television, you've got kind of long form storytelling. So you've got many episodes in a series to evolve a character, whereas in a film, you've got a certain amount of time. How does that affect your sort of preparation, really?
I think it becomes easier to kind of fall into the character. I don't know if that's true all the time, but for what I've been filming recently for about 6 months, and you know, it's a character who's similar, you know, close to my age. So I don't know. I think it sort of becomes easier to like fall into that character in a sense the longer that you do it. Or I felt that way, but I don't know. I'll have to wait and see when I see it whether that actually happened. But yeah, with something like Last Night in Soho, it was a much shorter shoot. I mean, it was still long for a film, to be honest. But yeah, I've done. I mean, as I said, this one I've just done in 6 months. So it really does vary from project to project. But I think if you've got if you've done the right preparation and you've got a good relationship and you've had those good conversations with the directors, then you should always be able to. Should always be not easy, but you should, you know, be able to have that time on set between action and cut. That's really, you know, that you've really used it and you feel that you've done a good job. But maybe getting into that place is easier the longer that you live with a character. Yeah,
absolutely. And you have got you've touched upon it there. You've got an exciting project coming up next, working with Keeley Hawes, I believe.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say anything about that and working with her? Because she's such a she's a national institution, Keeley.
Isn't she? I do you know what? I've never really. I mean, I've worked with certain celebs or whatever, but she was the one I was a little bit nervous when I met her. I don't know. I think just because, you know, she's such a British sort of, you know, just a huge person in TV, and I've seen her for so many years on my TV. And then suddenly I was like, oh, we've got to do a Zoom meeting with Keeley Hawes. Okay, this is going to be weird. You know, and also Zoom is weird at the best of time. I mean, it's fine for this sort of thing, but when you're acting, you know, I'm acting to you and then other people are watching on this Zoom link. It is quite odd. It's very weird. So, but no, working with her was amazing. We got on really well. She was just brilliant. And I don't know, it's also nice to meet someone who has had such an amazing career and has a family and sort of manages to have quite a balance. I know that sounds bad because I probably wouldn't say that about a man, but it is important and it's nice, it's comforting, and it's reassuring. And it also makes you sort of see how much you can aspire to achieve. But yeah, she was great, and we'll definitely keep in touch. We had a laugh.
And just finally, before I let you go, I just wanted to know, what have you learned, and how will that help you kind of, you know, move to the future with your acting?
Oh, I've learned so much from doing it. It was a long time ago, to be honest. It was before the pandemic. So, but I mean, the whole journey of it coming out and getting a job, it was very big for me. So I'll take a lot away with it. I think I'll just treasure working with Edgar, because I've just always been such a huge fan of his films. And yeah, I think those sort of moments and memories of being on set and getting notes from him, that's the main thing that I'll take away from it.
That's lovely. Thank you ever so much, and thank you for your time
Thank
today.
you.
And
Thanks
good luck
very
with
much.
the film, and hopefully we'll speak again in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Claire.